is Captain Joshua Mantz, and I've been in the military for 5 years. I was deployed to Iraq from October of 2006 to January of 2008. It was the most pivotal time in the Iraq War. It's when we made a cognizant shift from high-intensity operations to counterinsurgency operations. Our responsibility was to win the hearts and minds of the local population.
Josh was injured in Sadr City. He and his platoon sergeant were standing side by side, and a bullet ricocheted through that staff sergeant and into Josh Mantz's leg. And so that's really the core of what happened in that incident, where one soldier was lost, but Josh was able to survive.
Because the bullet hit me, I had the luxury of getting medevaced all the way back to Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Every single step of that medevac process, from my 19-year-old medic on the ground to the brigade surgeon who continued to work on me for 15 straight minutes after I was flatlined. And it goes on. The point that I'm getting at here is our physically wounded soldiers have streamlined access to the best medical care in the world. And because of that, when I was at Walter Reed, I had clinical psychologists walking into my room about every 4 hours, simply trying to get me to talk about what happened. And they try to pull a little bit more out of me each day. And what that did, it was preventative medicine. It's a basic principle of psychology. The earlier and more often you talk about a traumatic experience, the faster you will recover from it. So by the time I became an outpatient, which is about a month later, I had no PTSD issues from this whatsoever, nothing. But what about my soldiers in Iraq? My concern is for the soldiers who are not physically wounded but still suffer from the emotional consequences of war.
It's not just those with the visible wounds. It's everybody else in that small unit that was a part of that action, that's a part of that soldier's life, that are affected as well. We have critical stress debriefing teams. And when something like what happened to Josh occurs, we make everybody come together and tell that story, because oftentimes what happens is you walk away from a moment in combat and you remember it like you saw it. But when you come together as a team and someone mediates the story and helps you put it all together, you learn the rest of the story, and it makes it easier to balance what really happened, what your role was in it, what you were and were not responsible for, and you don't go away from that moment and create your own story in your mind and go on feeling guilty or anxious or otherwise. And that doesn't have to end right there. That kind of help, that kind of group discussion, group therapy or otherwise, can facilitate the ability for a soldier to come back from a combat trauma at any time. Reach out to those teammates and reach out to those networks of providers that we're given.
I think it takes real strength and courage to just raise your hand if you need help. And what we need to do, what I need to do as a senior leader, is to make sure that, when they do that, that we can follow through and take care of their emotional needs. I'm just a small piece of the senior leadership, but from the higher echelons, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, General Corelli, is very passionate about removing the stigma for asking for help.
If there's not a clearer message right now in our Army, I don't know what it could be. And I guess all I could really say to soldiers who currently feel like there's a stigma is that they're wrong. Because there are too many programs and people out there who are ready, willing, and able to help. From a leadership standpoint, I think that real warriors show strength when they're willing to reach out to their soldiers and prove to them and demonstrate to them that they genuinely care. That's how you defeat stigma.
I firmly believe that it comes down to one thing, and that is involved leadership. But what we got to learn from this is that everybody experiences emotional distress. Everybody has a breaking point. And the best way to prevent serious problems from occurring is to talk about it early and often, and to get help early and often. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think it shows real strength when a soldier is willing to step up and approach his peers and approach his leaders and even approach his subordinates and simply talk about the experiences in detail that they've had in combat in order to address the emotional health needs of everyone.